Oh my god, she's a weirdo.
Hello, 'tis I, Fat Cow. First, a little observation on yesterday's two lives. Foodie seems awfully happy for somebody who cannot, literally cannot, find somewhere to live. It's all rather strange. It's like she's pleased she's having difficulty finding somewhere to live because it kind of delays the alleged inevitable. That's just an observation. Secondly, somewhere in the girl world reaction channel universe, somebody or some somebodies are saying things Foodie doesn't like. I'm not claiming responsibility for this. I'm not that arrogant. But there's somebody out there, or at least one somebody, who is saying something that is very, very close to the truth. Anyway, as there's nothing else, literally nothing else to comment on from yesterday's lives, because Foodie is that entertaining, let me impart some information that I think is prudent to Foodie Beauty and her loyal supporters, and see if I can apply it to the current situation. Shall we? I want to talk to you about the type of people psychologists have observed who are more likely to join a cult. You can see where I'm going with this, can't you? Many studies on former cult members, because obviously current cult members aren't so, enthusiastic at coming forth and talking to psychologists, have been observed to share quite a few traits. The first one is a tendency to have had a history of trauma, let's say, particularly in childhood. Secondly, there is a desperate need to feel like you belong to a group of people. Thirdly, it's been observed that people who tend to join cults want to be acknowledged for their existence, their opinions. So the overwhelming theme of these individuals is the need to belong to a group of people, like minded people. Does this, in any way, shape, or form, sound somewhat familiar, let's say? I'm not going to target any individuals in particular when it comes to Foodie Beauty's VIBs. But let's look at the evidence that is presented in terms of the chat history. Now, most cults, on a side note, are known to have charismatic leaders. And while a great deal of us would argue vehemently that Foodie isn't charismatic, you have to admit she's fascinating. She's also a very tragic figure who has had many dramatically detrimental things happen to her, or at the very least claims to have had very many dramatic things happen to her, or in her word, has experienced many, many a crisis. She also claims her poor mental health is physically disabling herself and has a very dynamic relationship history. It appears that, by the same token, a vast majority of Foodie's VIBs tend to have similar backstories in terms of their mental health, their physical health, their relationship history, and somewhat sharing collectively a very, very strong desire to not only belong with people who have similar stories to share, let's say, but also like to belong in terms of sharing their collective trauma, or shall we say, a somewhat desperate need to trauma dump, and possibly, in some cases, to one up their charismatic leader or their figurehead with the trauma they are currently experiencing, let's say. Say that Foodie says she's having a particularly bad time with her mental health. A few of her VIBs will very freely volunteer information of their current lives or previous history of an equally traumatic or more traumatic incident in response, instead of showing maybe genuine, legitimate sympathy or a willingness to listen to what their figurehead is saying in order to understand. It's much like if you were speaking to somebody about something that was making you extremely depressed, and the individual's reaction was immediately to say others have it worse. For example, I am more depressed than you, which is not a particularly supportive thing to do, in my opinion. These VIBs, these very generous when they're able to VIPs, or if financial bribery or rewards are not able, then we are presented with the equally sad, let's say, I would, but I'm absolutely categorically broken, destitute, and in a much worse position than you, but I would donate if I could, in order to elicit some sort of reaction from their figurehead, maybe some benevolence or some sort. So while I'm not directly saying that Foodie Beauty's VIBs are similar to cult members, I'm not exactly not saying it either. Because quite frankly, there is no other explanation in the world that would explain why this small, increasingly smaller population of individuals within the universe that is Girl World fails to see Foodie in the same light that others do. They seem to have a tunnel vision when it comes to Foodie, or a blindness when it comes to Foodie Beauty, or one could possibly argue that they are somewhat brainwashed, or that they're so desperate to belong to a group of people that they are unwilling to see any faults within their benevolent leader and only concentrate on the similarities that they share with this quite frankly spectacular shit show of an individual. So, while I'm not going to directly say in plain English that these individuals are possibly somewhat misguided in their adoration, they possibly would be better things in their sphere, may require some additional attention from individuals that may be considered professional in their given field. These people who, while being observed from the outside looking in, seem to be putting Foodie on a pedestal that, quite frankly, she should not belong on, because should she fall from the pedestal, given her current stature, let's say, would cause irreparable damage to both her and whatever she landed. Need to step back, as I've said before, and think about why, when the vast majority of individuals see Foodie in one way and one way only, and that is she is a manipulative, emotionally blackmailing, vile individual who is extremely damaged and dysfunctional and is incredibly selfish and doesn't care a shit about her VIBs unless they are completely brainwashed by her, agree with every decision she makes and everything she says, will defend them despite the fact it makes everybody else question these people's intellectual capabilities, and are willing to encourage Foodie and throw money at Foodie. In other words, to support her 100%, regardless of anything she does, possibly even to the extent of murder, because we know they support her when she's obviously using a disabled child in order to elicit funds for herself. So exactly how low does Foodie have to go before these people realise they're being conned, and not just for money, but for their support? What would it take for them to step back and think, why does the majority of girl world see Foodie this way, yet I fail to see her, or actively choose not to see her this way? What does that say about me?